Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC Vegas 71, Sergei Pavlovich versus Curtis Blaydes just ended, and this is going to be my UFC post-fight. I'm mainly going to discuss the main event, Pavlovich versus Blaydes, but I'm also going to briefly discuss all the other notable fights on the card. I'll probably go through the entire main card and then just briefly discuss a couple notable prelims, because this night was very weird. We had weird reffing, weird judging. And, this was just a night where, for me personally, I did horrible in full card picks. I got 4 out of 11. One was a no contest, so I went 4-6-1. But a horrible night for full card picks for me. I don't want to sit here and harp on it too much, but I like to talk about it a little bit because, I'm always talking, I got 10 out of 14 right tonight. So I wanted to mention my full card picks for this card was absolutely atrocious. But starting with the main event, you had Sergei Pavlovich versus Curtis Blaydes. And I picked Curtis Blaydes going into this fight. I thought Curtis Blaydes would get him down, TKO him. I thought he had good technical striking, and I thought Pavlovich could even get KO'd on the feet, honestly. And I don't think, Sergei Pavlovich gets a first-round KO. I don't think that tells the story of the fight, to be honest, because this was a very competitive fight until it wasn't. Curtis Blaydes was doing very well until he wasn't. And, for me personally, this fight doesn't answer a lot of questions for Sergei Pavlovich, but it answers a lot of questions for Curtis Blaydes. Even though he's been around for a while, even though these are things a lot of people have felt we already knew, I just feel like for me now they're confirmed. We're going to get to those in a second. But how did the fight go? The fight started, it looked very good for Blaydes in my opinion. It wasn't, a blowout by any means. That's not what I'm saying. But you had Pavlovich kind of rushing forward. You had Curtis Blaydes shelling up well and landing counter right hands. You had Curtis Blaydes chopping the legs, which I thought he would because Sergei Pavlovich, very heavy on the lead leg. And then towards midway through the round, don't get me wrong, Pavlovich was landing some shots, but Curtis Blaydes was doing a very good job. When Pavlovich was rushing forward, Blaydes was shelling up very well. And midway through the first round, Sergei Pavlovich lands like a right hand, and I thought it might have been blocked, but I don't know. Blaydes got off balance. He ended up on the ground. I went back and rewatched it. I'm not sure if it hurt him, clipped him behind the ear or not. He seemed when he got up, he seemed like he was 100%. But after that, it seemed like Pavlovich just put it in a different gear. He started really pressing forward, really throwing heavy combinations, and Blaydes was willing to brawl with him. He landed some good shots of his own, but you can't sit in the pocket and brawl with somebody like Sergei Pavlovich. And Pavlovich starts landing some jabs. He lands one jab that really hurts Curtis Blaydes. It was right on the tip of the chin. It was a really hard jab. Then after that, Curtis Blaydes shot in on a takedown from about 6 feet away. Just dived in on a desperation takedown. Pavlovich stuffed it. And then he knew, okay, it's time for me to go in for the kill. I talked about it in the lead up to this fight. Sergei Pavlovich has unbelievable killer instinct. He went after Blaydes, did not let him off the hook, landed like 3 more stiff jabs, then eventually lands a nasty uppercut and then a right hand. Curtis Blaydes falls, and then he swarms him on the ground, finishes him with ground and pound. First round KO win for Sergei Pavlovich. And this was a fight where I really thought that Blaydes was the more well-rounded fighter. I did say, and I did think, if Pavlovich won, it would definitely be a first-round KO. I just thought Blaydes would mix in the clinch work, mix in the takedowns, and I thought there's no way he's going to brawl with Sergei Pavlovich. But what I learned in this fight, and we kind of already knew this, but it just cemented it for me, Curtis Blaydes has no fight IQ. And I know it's easier said than done. Oh, shoot it on a takedown. Why didn't you shoot it on a takedown? But to sit there and brawl in the pocket with a guy like Sergei Pavlovich, where that is his biggest strength, is insane to me. To only shoot in on a takedown once you're badly hurt by a jab, that is a horrible idea to me. And Curtis Blaydes, just the trope that he can't get by power punchers is official, is absolutely official. That is cemented. He can't get the job done against power strikers at all. He lost to Francis Ngannou twice. He lost to Derek Lewis, and now he lost to Sergei Pavlovich. And he shot in on one desperation takedown. I've talked about it before. I worried about it. We saw it in the Derek Lewis fight. Curtis Blaydes fell in love with his striking there. We saw it in the Dawkins fight. Fell in love with his striking there. It worked out for him there. But Curtis Blaydes, for some reason, maybe it's the sloppy entries that he does have, but he just refuses to fight to his strengths. Horrible fight IQ. But for Pavlovich, Now he's what, on a 6-fight win streak, all 6 fights finished in the first round via KO. And I'm telling you one thing, I've decided on my take on something regarding Sergei Pavlovich, which we're going to talk about in a second, that I was kind of iffy coming into this fight, but now it is official. And I'm really hoping the UFC changes direction on something in a second. But Pavlovich looked the same as ever. He still has not thrown a single kick in the UFC. All he does is rush forward and throw crazy combinations. He mixes in the jab a little bit, but he's really throwing looping power shots. And in the heavyweight division, he just can't be stopped. He just cannot be stopped. I would have loved to have seen him versus Francis Ngannou. He ate some big shots from Curtis Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes is a massive heavyweight. He ate those shots like he was nothing. Like it was nothing. He was never hurt in this fight. And he went out there and just brutalized Curtis Blaydes and found a finish midway through the first round. And now he's in a position where he really deserves a title fight. We're going to talk about what's going to happen in the heavyweight division. But I wish we would have got more answers. I wish we would have saw Curtis Blaydes mixing up with the clinch work and mixing up with the takedowns earlier in the fight before he was rocked badly. And I know it was still early in the fight when he shot it on the takedown. But it's like Pavlovich finishes these fights so quickly, we don't get to see where his gas tank is. We don't get to see, where his defensive wrestling really is, because Curtis Blaydes shot in on one takedown after he was badly rocked. So I just don't feel like we still have those answers, and I would have loved to have those answers no matter who won. But for me, Pavlovich, super impressive. Undoubtedly the #1 contender in the heavyweight division, in my opinion. And this is where I get to another topic regarding the heavyweight title. Jon Jones is the heavyweight champion. And it's been talked about since he won the heavyweight title at UFC 285 back in early March that it's going to be Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic, the former heavyweight champion. And there was talks of it happening in July, and there was talks of it now happening in November. And I'm going to make a full dedicated video on this topic, so I don't want to spend too much time. Cancel that fight. Leave Stipe Miocic answering phones at the fire department. The fight the fans want to see. And comment down below if you agree with me, because I'm just speculating for myself really here, but I believe it's true among the MMA community. We need to see Jon Jones versus Sergei Pavlovich next. Pavlovich has just looked unbelievable. And this is a variation of Jones versus Ngannou. I'm not saying Pavlovich is the same guy as Ngannou, but he has unbelievable KO power and unbelievable striking. And we didn't get the Jon Jones Ngannou fight. Book Pavlovich in the next title fight, please. Don't book Stipe Miocic. I don't want to see Stipe Miocic, coming back from the fire department after 3 years off to fight Jon Jones. So Jon Jones can just get free legacy, in my opinion. I want to see this matchup. I want to see Jon Jones versus Sergei Pavlovich. That is the fight to make. Even if Jones does fight Stipe, Pavlovich has to sit out for the winner. There's no way he should have to fight anyone else. He's put on a very impressive run. He's been knocking out guys left and right. He fought a top-ranked guy in Curtis Blaydes, which was a stylistically tough matchup, and he won impressively. He needs to get a title shot next. I don't want to hear he should go fight this guy or he should go fight that guy. And if Jon Jones beats Stipe and retires in November, or Stipe beats Jones, I think Stipe will probably retire. I think people are going to wonder, what do we do then? What do we do if we have a vacant heavyweight title again by the end of 2023? I have the solution for you. Maybe this will happen, maybe it won't. Book Tom Aspinall versus Marcin Tybura. When Tom Aspinall wrecks Marcin Tybura, then you book Sergei Pavlovich versus Tom Aspinall for the UFC heavyweight title. That makes the most sense in my opinion, because you look at the division right now, Stipe is damn near, getting up to his 50s, and, he's not going to be around for much longer. He hasn't fought in damn near 3 years. Pavlovich is ranked number 3. My guess is Pavlovich is going to jump up to number 1. Cyril Gane's currently number 1. He got ragdolled by Jones and submitted in 2 minutes. I don't know how he's still sitting number 1, but I believe Pavlovich will jump up to the number 1 spot. Curtis Blaydes, what I learned about him tonight is he will never be a champion. He'll probably never fight for a belt. He just can't get by power punchers. He just can't do it. He just can't do it. The chin is a liability. The fight IQ is a liability. He's just willing to sit there and trade with power strikers instead of mixing in his grappling. And I don't think that's going to get him very far. Then you have Tom Aspinall at number 5 coming off a loss. Tai Tuivasa, on a losing streak himself. KO'd first round by Sergei Pavlovich. You have Alexander Volkov. He's been around forever, but he's not really in title contention. You get to Sergey Spivak. He's kind of making his way up there. He just beat Derek Lewis. I don't know if he's really in contention yet. And then you have, Jalton Almeida sitting at number 12, who's fighting Jairzinho Rozenstruik at number 9. If Jalton Almeida wins that fight, he's kind of in contention. But the division, the heavyweight division, skill for skill, I believe is the worst division in the UFC. And I really think Pavlovich needs to just wait around and fight for the heavyweight title next. Stipe Miocic can go fight somebody else. I don't want to see Stipe fighting for the title. Please, UFC, please. And I'm going to do a dedicated video on this. Let me know down below if you want to see a dedicated video on this before I even go committing to it. I just believe we need to see Jon Jones versus Sergei Pavlovich. That is the fight to make. Very impressive tonight. Just knocking everybody out. And did it against a stylistic, difficult matchup in Curtis Blaydes, who I believe would mix in his grappling, but he didn't. Pavlovich still hasn't thrown a kick in the UFC. I've watched every single one of his fights recently, double-checked. He has never thrown a kick in the UFC. He has never shot in on a takedown in the UFC. He only throws his hands. That is it. And I'm very curious how he does against a very well-rounded fighter in Jon Jones. Plus, that's the scariest matchup in the division for Jon Jones. I think Jon Jones will go through Stipe Miocic, especially a Stipe Miocic who's been out almost 3 years. I'd much rather see that Pavlovich fight. But Pavlovich, very impressive. But I was already super impressed with him. And, I wish we would have just got more answers. I wish the fight would have went longer. But Pavlovich fights only last one round. So, great main event. I think it was fun while it lasted. I think it was very competitive. I think first round knockout doesn't tell the whole story. But let's move on to some other fights. Co-main event. This is where we get into some controversy in the next few fights. Bruno Silva versus Brad Tavares. Great fight while it lasted. First round KO win for Bruno Silva. Brad Tavares was landing some good body kicks, landing some good punches. Bruno Silva was landing a couple good shots as well. Brad Tavares gets hurt with, I think it was a right hand. Bruno Silva starts just lunging forward, throwing combinations. Brad Tavares kind of recovers a little bit. And then you see a knee land, or Brad Tavares starts kind of brawling because Bruno Silva's coming in just crazy with haymakers. Brad Tavares starts kind of brawling. He gets hit with a knee as he's ducking down. Then he gets hit with a picture-perfect right hand that drops him. And when he got dropped, it didn't look good at all. But then you have Bruno Silva swarm him. He lands one right hand. Brad Tavares is kind of moving around on the ground, looking to try to regain some type of position and defend himself. Mark Smith jumps in. Early stoppage. It was an early stop. Maybe Bruno Silva would have finished him anyway, but it just taints the stoppage. I think Brad Tavares could have survived. And, you look at a fight from earlier tonight, Jeremiah Wells. I mean, Jeremiah Wells, if Mark Smith would have been the referee again in the Jeremiah Wells versus Matthew Semmelsberger fight, Jeremiah Wells wouldn't have got the victory. So I just think it's super unfortunate. And I don't know what to say. Brad Tavares has been around forever. It was a competitive fight. I would have liked to have seen it play out a little bit more. I think Brad Tavares could have very well survived that onslaught. When he went down from the right hand, it was bad. But as soon as he hit the mat, he had his eyes right on Bruno Silva. Usually when you see a guy that's really out on the ground, they're kind of like looking over here, their eyes are closed or whatever it may be, eyes rolled back. He had his eyes to defend himself. He was looking to get into a defensively responsible position. Mark Smith jumped in anyway. Horrible stoppage. Moving down the card, because I'm only going to briefly touch on these fights. Bobby Green, Jarrett Gordon. Fun fight while it lasted. Bobby Green with his hands down his waist. Got clipped by Jarrett Gordon. I think it was a right hand. Kind of stung him a little bit. But Bobby Green continuing to move forward. Continuing to land good shots. He looks to land a left hook. Headbutts Jarrett Gordon. Head clash, whatever you want to call it. Drops Jarrett Gordon. Swarms him on the ground with brutal ground and pound shots. While Jarrett Gordon's getting KO'd, right? So he gets dropped with the headbutt. Then he gets KO'd with a ground and pound follow-up shot. Keith Peterson is looking out of the cage over here. I think he might have spotted a pack of Marlboro Cigs on the side of the octagon because he starts looking over here. Meanwhile, Jarrett Gordon's just getting bashed with ground and pound. He's knocked out. His head is bouncing off the canvas. Keith Peterson staring at a pack of cigarettes outside the cage. And finally he turns back, looks at it, stops the fight. And they end up deciding after looking at the replay, because of the head clash, caused the ending of the fight. It ended up being a no contest. I wonder if Keith Peterson was looking out to hear if someone would say it was a head clash or not, and then maybe he was going to stop it and give Jarrett Gordon a break or something along those lines. But Bobby Green knocks him out cold, but it comes off a headbutt. So I think it was the right call in getting the no contest. Joe Martinez almost announced. They gave him a card that announced it by Bobby Green by KO. He was about to announce it. They cut him off. Whoever cut him off needs to be fired. You don't cut off Joe Martinez, okay? But anyway, they cut him off. Then they announced it's a no contest. Bobby Green was upset about it, but it should have been a no contest. You can't basically get a finish off of a headbutt, even though it was inadvertent. So it's a no contest. I guess they'll run that fight back. But yeah, it's just super unfortunate. It's super late stoppage. Jared Gordon took a lot of unnecessary damage because Keith Peterson's not paying attention to the fight. So Keith Peterson, horribly late stoppage, which is typical for him. Moving down the card, at Jasmine Lucino versus Brogan Walker. Garbage. Lucino could have finished her. I felt like she was landing right hands at will. Brogan Walker, how is she even in the UFC? I mean, she's so bad. If she was a male, she'd be getting ready to fight Bo Nickel. That's how bad she is. She's feinting kicks, very slow. Lucino should be embarrassed for not finishing her. She was landing a right hand at will, but for some reason she didn't have no will to look for the finish, no killer instinct. Hated the fight, hate both of them, cut both of them. Moving down the card to what I believe was the best fight on the card, Jeremiah Wells versus Matthew Semmelsberger. Jeremiah Wells comes out aggressive, gets clipped with a right hand immediately right off jump. Then he gets hurt by another right hand, basically KO'd. Semmelsberger's following up. Wells, I thought it was a stoppage. I thought, honestly, it could have been a late stoppage at this point because he looked out. I haven't seen the replay fully, but he's getting ground and pounded, kind of wakes back up, then starts going into grappling mode. Gets Semmelsberger down and then beats him up on the ground for the rest of the first round. Good elbows. It was good, solid damage, too. I scored the first round for Jeremiah Wells, but I do believe you could give it to Matthew Semmelsberger off the first, 30 seconds, 1 minute, where he hurt him badly and arguably knocked him out. But I scored the first round for Jeremiah Wells, but I did think it was iffy. Second round, almost the exact same thing happens. Not as badly. Wells gets hurt early. Wells gets a takedown. Wells beats him up on the ground. I thought round 2 was clear for Jeremiah Wells. Third round, he eats some shots. He doesn't get hurt badly. He gets a takedown, beats him up on the ground. Clearly wins the third round. Jeremiah Wells does. And I thought it was clear, either 29-28 win for Wells with the second and third, or a 30-27. 2 judges gave it 30-27 for Wells. 1 judge gave it 29-28 for Semmelsberger. I don't necessarily hate that scorecard, but it's not particularly good. I mean, there's no way Semmelsberger should be getting the second or third round, in my opinion. First round is arguable, but this matchup showed me that Jeremiah Wells is not an elite striker. He's 36 years old. He wants to move into the ranks. I don't know if he's really ever going to be able to do that. And Matthew Semmelsberger has no grappling off his back. He has no takedown defense. I mean, at one point, I think it was in the third round, Jeremiah Wells locked up a double leg, picked him up in the air, and then slammed him on his back. Was just dominating him once he got to the grappling. And in the first and second round, he was out grappling him while he was hurt. So Semmelsberger really needs to work on the grappling. He has good striking. He has good power. He has good durability because he was eating nasty elbows in the third round. He was eating nasty ground and pound shots at the end of the first round. So he's super durable, but you can't defend a takedown. How are you going to survive if you ever end up getting that bump up to, more of the, maybe top 15 welterweights? Moving down the card, I'm not really going to talk. I mean, Christos Gigas beats Ricky Glenn, KOs him in the first round. Nothing to really talk about there. Ricky Glenn, I mean, what does that fight really mean? But a fight I do want to talk about, and this will probably be the second to last fight I talk about, Montel Jackson versus Ronnie Yaya. Ronnie Yaya is getting clipped up on the feet, looks for a takedown, kind of pulls guard. Montel Jackson gets out of there, starts lighting him back up on the feet, lands a nasty right hand, drops him, swarms him on the ground, brutally KOs him. It's time for Ronnie Yaya to retire. He's getting up there in age. He has no striking. He only has grappling. I don't want to see him take any more brain damage. And, Montel Jackson just put him away brutally in the first round. And I don't want to see Ronnie Yaya fight anymore. And the only other fight I want to talk about, and I think this was a horrible decision, was Muhammad Usman versus Junior Tafa. First off, both of them are garbage cans. The heavyweight division, in my opinion, is the worst division in the UFC, at least the worst male division. These guys don't even belong in there. I mean, Junior Tafa was lighting him up in the first round. Basically, I think he got clinched up early, held against the cage. Then he started lighting him up, hurt him badly, was swarming him, wasn't able to get the finish, got taken down and controlled. Second round, similar situation, lighting him up with big shots, gets taken down and controlled. And but Muhammad Usman doing no damage on the ground. Third round, Muhammad Usman gets him down, beginning of the round, controls him. I think Usman took the third round, but I think Tafa took 1 and 2. And honestly, at the end of the third round, Tafa finally got up off his back, landed some shots. I think you could make an argument for 30-27 Tafa. And I think that's going to be a bit of a hot take because of the ground control, because Usman had a lot of control in this fight. I think he ended up having like 11 or 12 minutes of control time. He did no damage because he was completely gassed. So, cut Muhammad Usman. He's riding the coattails of his brother. I know he won the Ultimate Fighter, but dude's an absolute garbage can in the worst division in the UFC. No striking at all. No cardio at all. He was gassed at the end of the first round. Tafa, I kind of give him a little bit more of an excuse because he was throwing haymakers early, looking for a finish. Kind of gassed out, had a late resurgence with like the last 20 seconds, was able to get up. But the grappling off his back was almost non-existent outside of that last 15 seconds of the third round, where he mustered up the energy to get up off his back and look to try to finish Usman. But I think this was a bad decision. I think bare minimum you give Junior Tafa the first and second round. But I do believe there's even an argument to give him 30-27. Just because he's landing damaging shots on the feet. However few there are, he's landing damaging shots. And then you have Usman just laying on him on the ground. I don't know how the ref didn't stand him up. I think it might have been Mark Smith in this fight. I don't remember for sure. I don't know how the ref didn't stand him up. Horrible night of fights, in my opinion. Horrible reffing, horrible judging all the way around. And this was just a off night. And I'm really upset we didn't get to see Ricky Simone versus Song Yudong. That really kind of helped carry this card a little bit more. But it is what it is. We're going to get that for a main event next week. But yeah, there you go. That's my post-fight for UFC Vegas 71. Sergei Pavlovich needs to be fighting for a title next. And I'm not going to talk about any more of these fights. I mean, I'm not talking about Norma Dumont versus Carol Rosa. You guys don't want to hear about that. Do me a favor, guys. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.